Hello and welcome back. Today we will be continuing our Victoria 3 tutorial series with a video on decrees. Now, in order to get to decrees, you kind of go through your political lens and you click on decrees, and here they all are. Before we can really jump into it, we need to have two sorts of background discussions, and that is, first of all, we need to talk about, what you're giving up in order to put down a decree, because this is a game about opportunity costs. You're giving up something to do something else. And second, we need to talk about kind of decrees in general. And so first up, let's talk about like the opportunity cost, and then we'll jump into decrees in general. Then we'll talk about bad decrees, and then we'll go through the decrees one by one. Okay. So the opportunity cost of running decrees is one of the ways you can spend your authority. You can spend authority in three ways, and then floating extra authority will also provide some usefulness. So just real quick, what the usefulness of floating extra authority gives you is it gives you minus enactment time on laws. This actually can be pretty useful in particular when consumption taxes aren't very good, so this can be very useful early on in the game, floating a little bit, especially because you tend to have a lot of authority in the early game, and then you tend to lose authority as you start to liberalize, which is generally pretty meta at this current point in time. Okay, for the consumption taxes, a lot of these consumption taxes won't be very good early on. Generally speaking, you want to kind of do sin taxes and luxury taxes, but this isn't a consumption tax video. Services and porcelain tend to be the really good ones late game. Porcelain mainly because you push construction, and so there's a glut of glass, which creates a glut of porcelain, so people overconsume porcelain. This is why porcelain is usually one of the more efficient ones alongside services. But these will not be very good early game, and early game is when you have a lot of authority, and so you will generally want to actually use decrees in particular in the early game, and then switch off of them in order to run consumption taxes, because consumption taxes allow you to push construction generally a little bit better than decrees will. Okay, the other thing you are going to give up, other than also important to note, in the budget tab, you can also increase government wages to give yourself a little bit more authority, and you can increase it, spend it, and then decrease it to have an authority malus or a negative authority balance, which will give you negative approval of interest groups that are not in government, which is the opposition over here. Okay. So, continuing on, the other thing that you can spend your authority on is in bolstering or suppressing interest groups. Every interest group has a pair of bonuses, a +5 bonus and a +10 bonus in terms of approval. The reason you would want to bolster them is twofold. For the most part, if an interest group is marginalized and you want to get them demarginalized, bolstering them can be a good idea, especially if, the votes will prop them up after this. And then once you get bolstered, also you can put in laws that only those people would allow, which can be the case with industrialists and trade unions, so wanting to bolster them past the 5%. But in addition to that, using your authority to juggle their clout can be particularly effective in some contexts, because when the clout of the interest group is over 20, or gets over 20 and then stays over 18, their bonuses will be doubled. And so in some situations, you might want to do a run where you are trying to juggle having 3 interest groups be powerful and high approval simultaneously in order to really harvest some good bonuses. Particularly the trade unionist intelligentsia industrialist trio is a good one to go for. I'm pretty sure multiplayer armed forces is pretty good, but this is kind of, getting off the beaten path and talking about interest groups a little bit too much. We want to talk about decrees, and so let's jump into it, and we're going to talk about just decrees in general. Just coming in the political lens, decrees only apply to one state, and this is really, really important to emphasize for when thinking about them, because the more states you have, the worse decrees get, with kind of a little bit of an exception. And so this means that if you are playing like a one-state minor, you are going to want to run a ton of decrees with your authority. And if you're playing a large sprawling country like Russia, well, Russia normally, this Russia has been... Anyways, when you're playing like a kind of normal Russia, you just have so many states that just running one decree in them can often be not very efficient in this sort of thing, so you want to be very sensitive to the number of states you have in your country when thinking about decrees. Also, decrees will tend to be... a lot of these decrees will tend to be kind of stronger in the early game, and then they will kind of tend to fall off for a variety of reasons what we'll get into when coming into each decree, but a main reason why they'll fall off is because you're just going to acquire more states as the game goes on, and so it's going to be proportionally less and less a percentage of your population you're running. If you only have one state, it's applying to your entire country, and so getting a bonus for your entire country could be quite strong. Okay, let's quickly go through the 3 trash decrees. And that is emergency relief is relatively trash. It gives you extra welfare payments. If you run the negative event chain, where it gives you a little bit cheaper on emergency relief, I do believe you get better ticks on the event. But for the most part, it's still not even worth putting in the authority, or this is my assessment. And so because of that, you just never run emergency relief. It just increases welfare payments, which is not that you wouldn't want to increase welfare payments, but you wouldn't want to spend 100 authority in order to do so. You're really not getting a lot from this. Next is promote national values. Assimilation is actually negative because currently you can only assimilate accepted pops, and the only reason you would want to assimilate pops to begin with is to get all the benefits from having more accepted pops into your country, and so this is kind of useless. And currently going, as a result of migration being extremely strong, going for conversion is not particularly good because you would rather be on total separation, at which point you accept the pops anyways, and so you really wouldn't ever want to go promote national values. And then encourage agricultural industry. Currently focusing on agriculture is not very strong. This might change in patch 1.3 because they are changing some of the ownership PMs for agriculture, but we'll have to wait and see what that looks like. But for right now, encouraging the agricultural industry is just not very good. Which leaves us several other decrees, which we're going to go through kind of one at a time and talk about them, starting with apologies, one moment. Starting with road maintenance. So road maintenance gives you +1 infrastructure per 100k population, with a maximum of +20 infrastructure, and also gives you plus 10% state construction efficiency. And I think the really important one, I think when you first start playing the game, you're like, you put this down because you need the infrastructure. In particular, the infrastructure is actually quite nice when you are before you get like railroads. It allows you to build taller in one place, and this benefit of the infrastructure is quite nice. But also, the state construction efficiency is really strong in the early game when you are building a majority of your stuff in a single state. You will want to build a ton of your stuff in a single state in order to get a larger throughput bonus, because throughput is absolutely insane. You will get a bonus from economies of scale. This scales non-linearly, so there's increasing marginal returns on getting larger and larger economies of scale bonus, because, so for example, when you build your second building, you will have an economy of scale bonus of 1%, so you will get the 1% on the new building and a 1% on the previous building. It's worth 102% of a building effectively because of this. When you build your 51st building, it's effectively worth 200% of a building because you get the 150% on economies of scale for the marginal building, the 51st building, but you also get an additional 1% on all the previous 50 buildings you built there, so it's like worth 200% of a building. This is not counting other throughput bonuses. And so you will want to build tall early on and focus on building tall, and this helps you do that. And if you are building in a single state, plus 10% construction state efficiency is the equivalent of just getting plus 10% construction if it's all happening in one state. And this is particularly powerful, but it falls off really quick because as your auto queue starts to pick up, as you know, your investment pool transfer starts to pick up, and especially as labor starts to run out wherever you're building and wages go up, the auto queue will start taking over a lot of the stuff and will start building elsewhere. But before then, road maintenance is particularly good. Okay, violent suppression is another one that I think is quite strong, but I personally underuse it. I underutilize it. In particular, what it gives you is plus 2% mortality per turmoil. That's not a positive modifier, but minus 50% state penalties from turmoil. In particular, when you conquer new territories, you will get a huge negative state construction efficiency modifier. And so you can't build in places you've newly acquired. Usually it's around 75%. If you put down issue violent suppression in these areas, you will decrease this, and so this can be worthwhile if you want to play a little bit of a more micromanagement style. I don't use this decree a lot. I actually think it's like pretty decent though, even though I don't use it. But if you want to click more and micromanage more, I actually think I should be using it, but I don't. And what it does is give us minus state penalties from turmoil. And so often what you will want to do kind of early game for most runs, because Orangey and Transvaal are so good, you know, just coming in and conquering Transvaal, slapping down this edict, building out your gold mines, and then once your gold mines are done, you get out of there with your authority, and you have gotten, you know, you have avoided like a 35 or half of the 75% construction efficiency malus, especially if you're incorporating Transvaal. This can be even smaller, but using this to micromanage your queue so that you are not paying the state construction efficiency malus as a result of turmoil can be particularly strong. And so this is why I think this one is actually looks pretty strong, even though I personally don't use it that much. We talked emergency relief is trash. Okay, now let's talk about issue promote social mobility. This is one where I think my evaluation of it can be wrong. I think this one is very good. A lot of my viewers think that it's even better than I think it is. And what it gives you is 25% education access. It also gives you qualifications. You're mainly focused on the education access, but you can use it, you know, to boost qualifications in a pinch in an area. Though usually the 25% qualifications, adding an extra quarter to qualifications, generally, if you have a qualifications problem, this isn't going to fix the problem. Generally, you need something else to try and fix the problem. But the 25% education access is incredibly good. What education access does is it increases the equilibrium towards which your literacy is trending. And so what this will effectively do is over time it will pull your literacy up 25% in that single state. And so for the majority of this run in the Sikh Empire, we actually were running promote social mobility because Punjab was over half of our population for a huge chunk of this game. And so it effectively was pulling up our literacy rate by 12%. Now, why 12%? Well, the education access is 25%. But it's only applying to roughly half of our pops when we had it here in Punjab, and so it was only pulling those ones up, and it trends towards an equilibrium. This trending towards an equilibrium, I think, is very important to emphasize, because after you pull out this decree, all the benefit, it's not that your progress gets gained and then it just stays there. If you yank out this decree, it will trend back down towards whatever the suitable amount is. And so it will help you move to an equilibrium faster, but unless you're keeping it on the whole game, eventually it'll stop helping you in this way. But very early on, it can be extremely strong because literacy is very good early on, and what most people think literacy gives you is just the increase to this cap, and this is not the case. If we come into the technology thing, and we go to technology spread, I would come to the left, but this thing doesn't like it, we will see that we are getting 61 tech spread per literacy. You get 75% of your literacy in tech spread to a bunch of other stuff. You get 75% of your literacy in tech spread to 3 different technologies. And so if you are in particular are backward, or you do not have a lot of universities, this will be giving you a huge, enormous chunk of technological ability, because you get the 50 base with your direct research for free. This is what you get, and if you don't build any universities, you'll be getting this 50 base in addition to your tech spread that you were getting from literacy. And so what this can do is, if you're pulling up, let's say half your pops are under this promote social mobility, right? It will increase, let's just say, by 12% your literacy. This means that 75% of this, never do math in a video, which I think is 27, you will be getting an additional 9 tech spread in each of your categories, multiplied by 3 is 27. So half of your, or sorry, 1/3 of the amount of tech you are getting will be coming from this, or math is hard. You will be getting 50 free in terms of direct research. You will be getting some from whatever your literacy rate is, but you will be getting an additional 27 research per week from just having promote social mobility, which is half of your direct research at this point in time. And so this can be extremely valuable, especially on countries that are highly dependent on it, and so it's quite good. But I still think my viewers seem to think that this is better than I seem to think it is. I'm recognizing that I could be mistaken. I think that it falls off quite quickly as you acquire new pops, and you have to have really unique situations, like us having over half of our population in one single state for over half the game, for promote social mobility to be particularly large, because all the benefit goes away when you take it out, or it will trend towards a new equilibrium. Okay, as we discussed, promote national values is trash. Encourage manufacturing, I think, is the best decree in the game. And I think what you do is you stick it on your capital after moving your capital to a place that has really, really high arable land count in order to give you, an equilibrium that's much higher. An equilibrium that's much higher that you can trend to before you start incurring the migration malice. And so I think you slap it down in the capital, and then you build hella tall in the capital, and then when you come and you click on any of these buildings, you will see that they are just getting an extra throughput for 20% from encouraged manufacturing industry, also 20% on services. And so our service industries here in the capital are also getting an additional 20% throughput from encouraging manufacturing. And so we're putting a ton of services here in the capital, over 100,000 services here, my guy. This is absolutely huge, and it is good the entire game. I think that building really, really tall in the capital and abusing this throughput bonus of economies of scale, because you can build these infinitely tall, is particularly strong. And so I think this is probably the best decree in the game. Almost all of my runs, I have this on in the capital, and just the capital only, and I think it's quite strong. Okay. Next up, encourage agricultural industry, we talked about, is trash. And encourage resource industries. I think this is really strong early game. And early game, when you are building up your first mine and your first logging camps, and you're looking to abuse economies of scale, so you're building in one place, I think what's meta is to have encourage manufacturing in one place, alongside encourage road maintenance in the same place, and encourage resource industry in one place, alongside encourage road maintenance in one place. And you look to push up the manufacturing where you're encouraging manufacturing, and you look to push the resources where you're encouraging resources industries. In particular, resource industries are the best early on. Logging camp is the best building that you can build because it is extremely efficient for contributing to the investment pool. And so this boosting that, giving you an extra 20% throughput, it effectively makes every building an 120% of a building early on when you do not have a ton of throughput bonuses. Like notably in Punjab, you take a look here, we have 90% throughput because we have a ton of bonuses. We have encouraged manufacturing, we have the trade unions, and we have economies of scale. Early game, throughput is even more valuable because you have less of it. And so this plus 20%, it's like each of your buildings is 120% of a building. And so I think that this kind of pairing an encouraged manufacturing, encouraged resource industry early is meta and is extremely strong. However, it falls off, right? After a certain point, you will be getting a smaller and smaller percentage of all of your resources from a single state. And so as this drifts down, encouraged resource industries tends to fall off. And the thing is you cannot build resource industries up infinitely tall like you can build manufacturing up infinitely tall. We can add 300, textile mills, and nobody's gonna stop us, right? And you could just do it. You cannot do this with resources, and so there will be an upper limit towards which once you hit there, it tends not to be so good anymore. Okay, greener grass campaigns gives 50% migration attraction. This is this is good, but here's the thing. This is only particularly good when you are trying to get a lot of people in one particular state of your country rather than a different state. And so this can be useful specifically if you are playing, someone in the New World, where if we take a look at Brazil, let's zoom in on Brazil, because we've done a Brazil run kind of recently, and we will see there's a ton of arable land that does not have all this used up employment. And what this will give you is, in terms of population, it will give you a huge attraction modifier from unused arable land, and this will be present in pretty much all of the New World, and this will kind of dilute the effect of available unemployment. And so generally speaking, if you're not in the New World, what you can do is you can build really, really tall, and if you build tall in a single place, what will happen is you'll attract migrants from the modifier of, available employment. But this is heavily diluted out by the unused arable land. So I think specifically in the context of if you're playing in the New World and you're trying to get a lot of people just to one particular state, greener grass campaigns can be useful. But otherwise, for the most part, I think it's better to just, drive up wages in a particular state and drive up, available employment and standard of living by, just building up in that state in order to drive migration rather than running a greener grass campaign. Like, for example, Punjab, so we have 31 million people here, but if we did not have so many people here, there would be an enormous amount of attraction. The reason we have a ton of negative migration is because we have all this unemployment. But if these people just weren't here, we would have there's a relatively high standard of living in Punjab, which would drive migration pretty high, and there would be a lot of employment available if, of course, there wasn't already a bunch of unemployed people here. And so I think it's better to try and push stuff. Notably, the equilibrium we can pay is a whole lot higher in all of these buildings. In order to have these buildings still be profitable, you could pay more because there's a bigger throughput bonus. And so I think encouraging manufacturing is going to generally be better, or encourage resource industries is going to be better than greener grass campaigns. But occasionally, like in the case of New World countries, you want to run greener grass campaigns on top of that. Next up is a weird decree that I think is probably the second best decree, and this is the final decree we're going to talk about, and that's Enlistment Efforts. And I think this is the second best decree, but it's actually just really hard to evaluate. Enlistment Efforts will just let you win wars that you can't otherwise win in a way that is extremely robust early on in the game. And what it gives you is it gives you 25% training rate, okay, but the big one is the 5% conscription rate. And if we take a look, and we come in and take a look at laws, and we take a look at professional army, which seems to be relatively the meta, what this will give you is a 1% conscription rate. So if you add 5% conscription on top of this, this will mean your conscription level will go up by 500%. And so, for example, we're not going to use Punjab as an example because it probably has a conscription center of 50, but if we come in here, let's find a place that's not very well employed. Let's go to Nejd here. And we see Nejd has a conscription center of 2 currently. If we put down enlistment efforts in Nejd, this is getting the 2 from the 1% conscription rate off of professional army. If we put down the enlistment efforts, this would suddenly jump up, right, plus 500%, or X6, this would jump up to 12 conscripts. And so if you have a few places that, you know, are 7, 8, 9 conscripts, you can, early on in the game, just slap down enlistment efforts on like 3, 4, 5 states, right, and get access to jumping from, like, you know, like an 8, 6xing it, and getting to, you know, a 42. Is that the right math? Or not a 42, a 48. Right? Going from a conscript level of 8 to 48 in, you know, 4 or 5 different states, you know, that's plus 200 battalions out of nowhere off of enlistment efforts when you just put down several of them and you just keep them on just for the war and then you take them off. And so you can abuse this to really win wars you have no business winning. And so maybe enlistment efforts is the best decree. If I was playing PvP and I could only choose one decree to take with me, it would be enlistment efforts. But PvE probably encourage manufacturing industry, maybe not. In particular, like it allows you to, like, if you're playing 2 Sicilies and you're playing Sardinia Piedmont, well, this isn't close to the beginning of the game, but like you can slap around 2 Sicilies as Sardinia Piedmont as the start of the game if you use the encourage the Enlistment Efforts Edict. And so the Enlistment Effort Edict is incredibly strong. It lets you just get a ton of battalions out of nowhere and then disappear after you're done with them. You know, it doesn't... what it probably should do is it should create an equilibrium level that it trends to. Not sort of like a light switch level that it trends to, although it takes quite a long time to bring the conscripts up anyways. But this might make it so that it's a little bit more balanced. But currently, if you know you're going to fight a war, just at the very beginning of the war, you slap down the enlistment efforts in all the places you're interested in, 6xing the amount of conscripts you have. You activate the conscripts, and you just have a huge army out of nowhere that your opponent can't deal with. And so, yep, that has been kind of a summary of all the little decrees. I hope you found this video enjoyable / informative. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and have a good day.